Welcome back to Rare CoinX PRO. Today we are diving deep into 4 incredible Lincoln Wheat Pennies that every coin collector needs to know about. These small copper coins may look like ordinary 1-cent pieces, but depending on the year, the mint mark, the condition, and the story hiding inside each one, some examples are worth far more than you could ever imagine. Stay with us all the way to the end, because our final coin broke a record that will genuinely take your breath away. Let's start with our first coin, the 1952 no-mint mark Lincoln Wheat Penny. Close your eyes and picture America in 1952. The Korean War is in its final chapter, Dwight Eisenhower is on the campaign trail, and in city after city across the United States, Americans are reaching into their pockets and wallets and passing around small copper coins as easily and thoughtlessly as breathing. One of those coins is the 1952 Lincoln Wheat Penny, produced at the Philadelphia Mint, which is why it carries no mint mark at all. Philadelphia was the original home of American coinage, the nation's very first mint, and by tradition, coins struck there bore no identifying letter, while Denver used a D and San Francisco used an S. So when you hold a 1952 wheat penny with a clean, unmarked field beneath the date, you are holding a coin born in the city where American money itself was born. The Lincoln Wheat Cent, as it is officially known, was first minted in 1909 to commemorate the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln, and it made history as the very first regular-issue United States coin to feature the portrait of a real person. Designed by the sculptor Victor David Brenner, the coin carries Lincoln's dignified profile on the obverse, framed by the words, "In God We Trust," arching above, and "Liberty," standing proudly to the left. On the reverse, 2 elegant stalks of wheat rise on either side of the denomination and the Latin motto, E pluribus unum, meaning out of many one. By 1952, this design had already been gracing American pockets for over 4 decades, and the 1952 wheat penny was part of the final decade of production for the wheatback design, which would come to an end in 1958 before being replaced by the Lincoln Memorial reverse in 1959. That gives every wheat penny from this era a quiet but real historical weight, the sense of a beloved design living out its final years without anyone around it quite realizing it yet. When it comes to condition, this is the most important factor for a 1952 Philadelphia penny. The Philadelphia Mint produced a significant mintage in 1952, and the coin was widely circulated as the United States experienced the robust economic activity of the post-World War II boom. That high production and heavy circulation means that finding a well-preserved example takes a careful, patient eye. What you are looking for is strong definition in Lincoln's hair above the ear, a cheekbone that still shows its original contour rather than a smooth, worn surface, and wheat stalks on the reverse where every individual strand is still crisp and readable. The very best examples to seek out are those graded full red, meaning they retain their original bright copper luster exactly as they left the mint, since a red coin is one which keeps its original coppery shine as it was issued from the mint, and the value of red coins is significantly higher than the equivalent grade of red-brown or brown examples, in terms of background and composition. The 1952 Lincoln Wheat Penny is struck in 95% copper with 5% zinc and tin, giving it a diameter of 19 millimeters and a weight of 3.11 grams. That warm, reddish glow of high copper content is one of the things that makes wheat pennies so visually appealing compared to the zinc core pennies that would come along decades later, and a gem uncirculated 1952 in full red is genuinely beautiful to behold. Collector demand for this date is steady and encouraging. Because of the enormous mintage of 1952 Lincoln Wheat Pennies, in excess of 1 billion coins having been produced across all 3 mints that year, the value of circulated examples is relatively modest. However, the collector community for wheat pennies is large, passionate, and always growing, and anyone building a complete date and mint set of the Lincoln Wheat series absolutely must have a 1952 Philadelphia in their collection. The Philadelphia Mint also struck 81,980 proof coins in 1952, which are the crown jewels of this particular year, struck on polished blanks with mirror-like fields and exceptional detail. As for current market value, the 1952 no-mint mark Lincoln Wheat Penny is worth approximately $60,000 in average circulated condition. rising to between $114,000 and $462,000 or more in uncirculated mint state condition. Proof examples are where the value climbs dramatically, with heritage auctions having sold a 1952 proof example for $790,000 at the PR-64 grade level, and a 1952 PR-68 specimen selling for an extraordinary $1.20 million. For collectors chasing this coin, the single most important tip is to focus on color above all else. A brown circulated 1952 penny and a gem red uncirculated 1952 penny are technically the same coin, but in the world of collector value they exist in entirely different universes. Seek out the brightest, most original examples you can find, and if you plan to invest more seriously, look for professionally graded examples certified by PCGS or NGC, since third-party authentication removes all doubt about condition and authenticity and consistently delivers stronger resale results. Now let's move on to our second coin, the 1953D Mint Mark Lincoln Wheat Penny. By 1953, the Lincoln Wheat Penny was a permanent fixture of American daily life, a coin so familiar that most people gave it no more thought than they gave to breathing. But in the Denver Mint that year, something remarkable was quietly happening. The presses were running at a staggering pace, producing 700,515,000 pennies marked with the letter D, making the 1953 D the ninth highest mintage of any date and mint mark combination in the entire Lincoln Wheat Penny series. 700 million coins. It's an almost incomprehensible number, and it fundamentally shapes the story of this coin for collectors today. The historical backdrop of 1953 is a rich one. The Korean War armistice was signed in July. Queen Elizabeth II was crowned in Westminster Abbey, and America was riding a wave of post-war confidence and prosperity. Every one of those hundreds of millions of Denver pennies passed through that world, changing hands in diners and department stores, gas stations and grocery markets, absorbing the texture of everyday American life in a way that no document or photograph quite captures. The Wheat Penny series was by this point deep into its final decade, with only 5 more years remaining before the design would be retired forever, though of course nobody handling their change in 1953 knew that YET'd in terms of condition and what to look for. This is where the story of the 1953 D becomes genuinely fascinating for collectors. Denver Mint coins from this era were struck at higher production speeds than Philadelphia coins, which contributed to strike weakness on many examples, with most original rolls containing coins in the MS-63 grade range and lower. This means that the 1953 D is simultaneously one of the most common wheat pennies in existence and one of the most challenging to find in truly high grade, a paradox that makes hunting for a gem example genuinely exciting. PCGS has certified only 9 examples in MS-67 plus red, a population so small that when a fresh example appeared at heritage auctions, it reset market expectations for the variety entirely. When it comes to background and composition, the 1953 he carries all the hallmarks of the classic wheat cent design. It is struck in 95% copper with 5% zinc and tin, measures 19 millimeters in diameter, and weighs 3.11 grams, with the Denver D Mint mark sitting beneath the date on the obverse. Victor David Brenner's Lincoln portrait remains one of the most admired coin designs in American numismatic history, and the combination of that portrait against the warm glow of high copper content bronze gives a well-preserved 1953 a genuinely elegant presence that photographs simply cannot do justice to. Collector demand for this date is wonderfully accessible for newer collectors and genuinely competitive at the top end. At circulated grades, the 1953 D is an affordable, approachable coin that makes a great starting point for anyone building a wheat cent set. But as condition climbs, demand climbs with it in a dramatic way. Rare varieties also drive real collector excitement, with 1953 D cents struck on silver dime planchets, which look exactly like a penny-sized dime, worth more than $1,000 even in circulated condition, and off-center strikes and repunched mint marks also carrying meaningful premiums. For current market value, the 1953 D Lincoln Wheat Penny is worth approximately $57,000 in average condition, rising to between $88,000 and $170,000 or more in uncirculated mint state condition. At the very top of the scale, the documented auction record for an MS-67 red specimen is $390,000, achieved at Bowers and Marina in 2007, with a more recent MS-67 Plus red selling for $800,000 at Heritage Auctions. For collectors, the key tip with the 1953D is to be discerning about color and strike. Given that Denver production speeds led to many weakly struck examples, finding a coin with full, sharp detail in Lincoln's hair and strong wheat stalks on the reverse is genuinely rewarding and worth a small premium over a softer struck example. Also keep a magnifying glass handy to check for the D over D repunched mint mark varieties, which can be found with patience and significantly boost the value of what would otherwise be a common date. Now let's move on to our third coin, the 1955 D mint mark Lincoln Wheat Penny. 1955 is one of the most legendary years in the entire history of the Lincoln cent, and the reason for that sits squarely at the Philadelphia Mint, which produced one of the most famous error coins in American numismatic history that year. The 1955 double die obverse, struck at Philadelphia without a mint mark, shows one of the most dramatic and unmistakable examples of doubling ever seen on a U.S. coin, with the motto, "In God We Trust," the word "Liberty," and the date 1955 all clearly doubled, creating a coin that has fired the imaginations of collectors for 7 decades and is worth anywhere from over $1,000 in average circulated condition to tens of thousands in gem uncirculated grades. That one extraordinary Philadelphia coin has cast a long shadow over the entire 1955 date, and it has the happy side effect of making people look very carefully at every 1955 penny they encounter, including our coin today, the Denver Mint issue. The 1955 D itself carries no such error, but it has its own compelling story. The Denver Mint struck 563,257,500 pennies in 1955, while the San Francisco Mint produced just 44,610,000, and 1955 holds a bittersweet historical distinction. It was the last year San Francisco produced wheat pennies before ceasing operations until 1968, giving the entire 1955 date a sense of closure and ending. The Denver issue, by contrast, is a coin of abundance and energy, a product of a city and a mint running at full industrial capacity during one of the most prosperous decades in American history. Eisenhower was president, Disneyland had just opened in California, rock and roll was being born, and hundreds of millions of copper pennies were rolling off the Denver presses into a nation that needed every one of them. In terms of condition, the 1955 D presents one of the more interesting challenges in the late wheat cent series. The 1955 D wheat penny is very difficult to find in the highest mint state grades, considered one of the toughest to find among 1950s Denver issues, with many examples coming in one grade lower than they actually appear, which can significantly affect pricing. This means that a careful collector who knows how to assess strike quality and surface preservation has a real advantage when hunting for 1955 D coins in bulk lots or estate sales. Look specifically for coins where Lincoln's hair above the ear shows sharp, individual strands, where the wheat stalks have crisp, well-defined ribs, and where the surfaces carry original mint red rather than the brown oxidation that comes from years of exposure. The background and composition of this coin follows the beloved wheat cent formula. Struck in 95% copper with 5% zinc and tin, the 1955 D weighs 3.11 grams and measures 19 millimeters across, with Victor David Brenner's Lincoln portrait on the obverse and Christopher Ironside's 2 wheat stalks on the reverse. The D mint mark sits beneath the date on the obverse, a small letter that makes a big difference to the coin's numismatic identity. Collector demand for the 1955 D is healthy and growing, particularly as the wheat cent series continues to attract new collectors drawn by the accessible price points of common circulated examples and the genuine excitement of hunting for high-grade gems. The fact that 1955 carries the legendary double die story of its Philadelphia cousin adds a halo effect of collector attention to the entire year, and the relative difficulty of finding sharply struck, gem-quality 1955 D cents keeps demand competitive at the top end of the market. For current market value, the 1955 D wheat penny is worth approximately $51,000 in average circulated condition, rising to between $89,000 and $190,000 or more in uncirculated mint state examples. At the very summit of the grading scale, PCGS CoinFacts lists the auction record as $540,000 for a 1955 DMS 67 Plus red examples sold by Heritage Auctions in 2024, a remarkable number for a coin that began its life as a single cent for collectors pursuing this date. The most valuable tip is patience combined with a magnifying glass. Always examine 1955 D cents carefully for varieties, since minor double dies and repunched mint marks do exist and can add meaningful premiums. More importantly, train your eye to distinguish between a strongly struck Denver cent and a weakly struck one, since that difference in sharpness can translate directly into a grade point or more, and in the high mint state range, a single grade point can mean the difference between a $20 coin and an $8,000 coin. And now, let's take a look at our fourth and final coin, the 1956 D Mint Mark Lincoln Wheat Penny. We have arrived at our final coin, and this is the one that carries a number so extraordinary it deserves a moment of quiet appreciation before we even begin. But first, let's set the scene, because the story of the 1956 D Lincoln Wheat Penny is one of almost paradoxical extremes, a coin so common it was literally everywhere, and yet so rare in its highest possible condition that a single example sold for $18,000. America in 1956 was a nation at the height of its post-war confidence. Elvis Presley was recording Heartbreak Hotel, the interstate highway system was being built, and the Denver Mint was about to set a record that still stands today. The Denver Mint struck 1,098,201,100 Lincoln Wheat Pennies in 1956, the highest mintage in the entire history of the wheat cent series. 1,098,000,000 coins. Every shop, every vending machine, every child's piggy bank in the American West was being stocked with these small copper coins, and the presses at Denver ran day and night to keep up with demand. By 1956, there were only 2 years remaining before the wheat reverse design would be retired forever, replaced in 1959 by the Lincoln Memorial reverse that a new generation would grow up handling without ever knowing the elegant simplicity of the wheat stalks they replaced. When it comes to history and condition, the 1956 D occupies a fascinating position in the collector world. With over 1.5 billion cents struck across both the Philadelphia and Denver mints in 1956, circulated examples are genuinely everywhere, making this one of the most accessible and affordable wheat cents for beginning collectors. But here is the beautiful irony of this coin. That billion-plus mintage means almost nothing at the very top of the grading scale, because PCGS CoinFacts describes the 1956 D as almost unheard of at MS 67 Plus, meaning a coin that was struck by the billion can barely be found in gem condition today. Almost every one of those 1 billion Denver pennies went straight into everyday circulation, passing through hands, rattling around in pockets, and accumulating the wear and marks that collectors find so disheartening in later years. The coins that somehow survived 7 decades of existence in pristine, bagmark-free, fully red condition are vanishingly rare, and the market pays accordingly. The background and composition of this coin represents the final flowering of a great American design tradition. The 1956 D is composed of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, giving it a weight of 3.11 grams and a diameter of 19 millimeters, with the familiar D mint mark sitting just below the date on the obverse. Victor David Brenner's Lincoln portrait, which had first appeared on the cent in 1909, was by 1956 one of the most recognized images in America, a portrait so familiar it had become almost invisible to the people who handled it every day. And yet looked at fresh, with collector eyes, it remains a remarkably dignified and well-conceived design. Lincoln's strong profile framed by the faith-affirming inscription above and the proud declaration of liberty to his left. Collector demand for the 1956 D is wonderfully layered. At the entry level, it's a perfect first wheat penny for any new collector, since clean circulated examples are easy to find and very affordable. At the intermediate level, it completes date sets and provides a strong, historically significant anchor for the final years of the series. And at the very top level, the gem red examples are the stuff of genuine numismatic excitement, the kind of coin that serious collectors will pay thousands of dollars to add to their certified sets. Repunched mint mark varieties also exist for this date and can sell for between $5 and $20 depending on the severity and prominence of the doubling, giving eagle-eyed collectors an extra reason to examine every 1956 D they come across. Now for the current market value, and this is the moment we promised you at the very beginning of today's video. A standard circulated 1956 D Lincoln Wheat Penny is worth approximately $88,000 in average condition, rising to between $190,000 and $230,000 or more in uncirculated mint state examples. Recent sales show common uncirculated examples trading for $2 to $4, a genuinely accessible price for a beautiful coin. But now hold on to your seat, because at the very apex of the grading scale, PCGS Coinfax lists the auction record as $444,000 for a 1956 DMS 67 Plus red example sold in December 2022. And there is another record that goes even further. PCGS auction records show a 1956 Philadelphia no mint mark MS 67 Plus red selling for an astonishing $878,600, and a PR68 deep cameo proof example of the 1956 cent that brought $970,000 at auction in 2003. 1 cent $18,000. $57,000. These are not hypothetical numbers. These are real auction results for a coin that started its life as a single unit of copper alloy pressed between two steel dies in a Denver factory in 1956. For collectors, the tips here are rich and rewarding. First, always check your 1956 D cents for the D mint mark condition itself, since repunched mint marks are a genuine find and worth close examination with a loupe. Second, understand the power of color when assessing value, since a fully red, bright copper cent and a brown, toned example of the same date and grade exist in entirely different value tiers, with red consistently commanding the strongest premiums. Third, if you have reason to believe your 1956 D is in exceptional, gem quality condition, do not hesitate to submit it to PCGS or NGC for professional grading, because the cost of certification is a small investment compared to the potential upside of discovering you have one of the vanishingly rare high-grade survivors from that billion-coin mintage. And finally, store any wheat pennies you value in archival quality holders away from humidity and air exposure, since copper is sensitive to atmospheric changes and a coin that has survived 70 years in good condition deserves to be protected for the next 70. As we've seen today, these 4 Lincoln Wheat Pennies from 1952, 1953, 1955, and 1956 prove that even the most ordinary-looking 1-cent coins can carry extraordinary stories, surprising values, and genuine numismatic excitement when you know where to look and what to look for. Whether you are just beginning your collecting journey or you have been hunting coins for decades, the Wheat Cent series offers something for everyone, from affordable, beautiful entry-level pieces to gem red rarities that command prices most people would never associate with a single penny. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, please like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you never miss another exciting coin collecting video from this channel. Share it with your friends and fellow collectors, and we will see you in the next one. Happy collecting!